The setting sun cast long shadows across Miller's mechanical marvels, where old cars and machinery parts created a maze of metal and rust. Tom Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead with an oil-stained rag as he finished working on Mrs. Thompson's ancient pickup truck. At 42, he had earned quite a reputation in the small town of Pine Grove for fixing things that others claimed were beyond repair. Just as he was about to close up shop for the day, a bright flash lit up the evening sky. Tom's first thought was lightning, but the cloudless summer evening told a different story. The light grew more intense, followed by a high-pitched whine that made his teeth ache. Something was falling from the sky, leaving a trail of blue-white fire in its wake. The object crashed into the back of his junkyard with a thunderous boom, sending parts flying everywhere. Tom ducked behind a broken-down tractor as pieces of metal rained down around him. When the dust settled, his curiosity got the better of his common sense. "Well, that's definitely not a Chevy," he muttered, approaching the smoking crater. The object was about the size of a small bus, but its shape was all wrong. It looked like someone had taken a teardrop, twisted it sideways, and covered it in what appeared to be liquid metal. The surface shifted and rippled even as he watched, reminding him of mercury in a thermometer. A section of the hull suddenly became transparent, revealing a figure inside. Tom jumped back, his heart racing as a tall, slender being emerged from the craft. The creature wore what looked like a formal suit, if suits were made from flowing water and starlight. "Oh dear, the being said in perfect English, though its mouth didn't move. "This is most unfortunate indeed." Tom blinked several times. "Are you okay there?" That was quite a landing. The beam turned toward him, its silver eyes widening slightly. "Ah, a local inhabitant. I am Ambassador Gray of the Stellar Council. I appear to have experienced a most inconvenient malfunction in my ship's gravitational redistribution matrix." Tom nodded slowly, pretending he understood what that meant. "Right. Well, I'm Tom Miller, and you've landed in my junkyard. I fix things for a living, if that helps." The ambassador made a sound that might have been a laugh. "My dear fellow, while I appreciate the offer, this vessel contains technology far beyond your world's current understanding. I simply need to send a distress signal, and a recovery team will arrive in." The ambassador paused, touching something on its suit that flickered with light. Oh no. Problem?" Tom asked, walking around the ship with professional interest. Despite its alien origin, he could see what looked like engine components through the translucent hull. The communication array was damaged in the landing, and the backup system appears to have been. The ambassador's voice trailed off as it noticed Tom running his hands along the ship's surface. "These patterns here," Tom said, pointing to some swirling designs on the hull, "they're not just decorative, are they? They look like heat dissipation channels, kind of like what we use in high-performance engines, just way more advanced." Ambassador Gray stared at him. "You can recognize the thermal management system?" "Well, machines are machines," Tom shrugged. "Some are just fancier than others, and from what I can see, you've got something loose in your main drive assembly. See how the power flow patterns are irregular on the port side?" The ambassador's expression shifted to what might have been surprise. "You can see the power flow?" "Not exactly, but I can see how the heat patterns don't match up right. Kind of like when a car's timing belt is off." Tom was now completely absorbed in studying the ship's systems. "You know, if you'd let me take a look, I might be able to." "Absolutely not," Ambassador Gray said quickly. "This is highly sophisticated equipment. Besides, I must reach the Stellar Peace Conference within 3 Earth days, or decades of diplomatic work could be undone." Tom stepped back, raising his hands. "Fair enough. Just thought I'd offer. Though I should mention that the nearest town with any real technology is about 6 hours away, and that's just a small city. Might take a while for any help to reach you out here." The ambassador looked at its ship, then at Tom, then back at its ship. A series of lights flickered across its suit as it appeared to think. Perhaps I could allow you to at least examine the damage, it said finally. But you must promise not to touch anything without my explicit permission. Tom smiled, already reaching for his toolbox. Deal. Now, let's see what we're working with here. Tom circled the alien ship 3 times before he even opened his toolbox. Each time around, he noticed something new about the strange vessel. The way its surface moved reminded him of the way oil shimmers on water, but with a purpose to its patterns. Ambassador Gray followed behind him, getting increasingly nervous with each circuit. I must remind you again, the ambassador said, this technology is far beyond what you're used to working with. Perhaps we should wait for proper assistance. Tom knelt down beside what he guessed was an access panel. You said you need to be at that conference in 3 days, right? How long would it take for your people to get here? Approximately 5 Earth days, given our current position relative to the nearest repair station. Then waiting isn't really an option, is it? Tom pulled out a flashlight from his pocket and shined it at the ship's surface. The light seemed to bend and twist as it hit the hull. Now that's interesting. Your ship's skin reacts to light, just like it does to touch. The ambassador moved closer, curiosity temporarily overcoming concern. You notice such things. Most beings simply see the aesthetic surface. In my line of work, you learn to look past the pretty stuff to see how things actually work. Tom reached into his toolbox and pulled out an old car mirror. He angled it to reflect light onto different parts of the ship, watching how the surface responded. See how it reacts differently here. That's where your power flow is blocked. Ambassador Gray's silver eyes widened. That is precisely where our diagnostics indicated a malfunction. How did you determine this with just a mirror? Simple mechanics. Energy has to flow somewhere, and it always leaves signs if you know what to look for. Tom stood up and dusted off his knees. Your ship's got what we call a bottleneck. Like when a garden hose gets kinked, water can't flow right. The ambassador made a series of lights flutter across its suit, but the gravitational redistribution matrix operates on principles that— Look, Tom interrupted gently. I don't need to understand all the fancy physics. What I'm seeing is energy that's supposed to go from point A to point B, but it's getting stuck around point A and causing everything else to work harder. In any machine, that's bad news. He walked over to an old muscle car in his yard and popped the hood. See this engine? Different technology, same basic principle. Energy needs to flow smoothly or things break down. He pointed at various parts as he spoke. Intake, combustion, exhaust. It's all about flow. The ambassador moved closer to the car, genuine interest showing in its movements. Your species achieves mechanical propulsion through controlled explosive reactions. How remarkably innovative. Sometimes the simple solutions are the best ones. Tom turned back to the ship. Now, if you'll let me, I think I can clear that blockage. Won't even need to take anything apart. Just need to reset the flow pattern. Ambassador Gray hesitated. The safety protocols strongly advise against unauthorized modifications. Those same protocols got you stuck here, Tom pointed out. Sometimes you need to think outside the manual. The ambassador's suit rippled with colors as it considered. Finally, it said, very well. But please explain what you intend to do before you do it. Tom grinned and reached for his toolbox again. First, we need to understand how your ship's surface responds to different types of energy. I've got some ideas involving magnets and a modified ultrasonic cleaner I use for car parts. You intend to use cleaning equipment on a diplomatic vessel. The ambassador's voice rose slightly. Trust me, Tom said, already setting up his equipment. Sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? The ambassador made a sound that might have been a sigh. In my experience, those words often precede the most interesting disasters. Tom just smiled and continued working. In his mind, he was already mapping out how to adapt his Earth-based tools to work with this amazing alien technology. This was going to be the most interesting repair job of his life. assuming he didn't accidentally blow up the whole junkyard in the process. The late evening sun had completely disappeared by now, leaving Tom's junkyard lit only by his workshop lights and the soft glow of the alien ship. He had spent the last hour testing different approaches on small sections of the ship's hull, while Ambassador Gray watched with increasing amazement. "This is completely against all known engineering principles," the ambassador said, watching Tom work. "You're using sound waves from a parts cleaner combined with magnetic fields from an old speaker to influence highly advanced quantum materials. And it's working, isn't it?" Tom grinned, adjusting the makeshift device he had created. The ship's surface rippled more freely where he had applied his treatment. Sometimes you don't need fancy tools, just the right idea. He moved around to the blocked section they had identified earlier. "Now for the tricky part. This is like unclogging a pipe, but the pipe is made of space magic and probably costs more than my entire town. Perhaps we should." The ambassador started, but stopped as Tom switched on his device. The modified ultrasonic cleaner hummed to life, its sound waves now focused through a funnel made from an old satellite dish. At the same time, Tom activated the electromagnetic field he had created using parts from several old car speakers. Where the two forces met, the ship's hull began to dance and ripple like mercury in a blender. Come on, Tom muttered, adjusting the frequencies carefully. He had wrapped the handle of his tools in rubber from old tires, just in case the alien metals decided to do something unexpected. Suddenly, there was a sound like a giant bell being struck underwater. A wave of energy pulsed through the ship's hull, making all the hair on Tom's arms stand up. The blocked section of the hull flowed like water for a moment, then settled into a new pattern. "Ha! There it goes," Tom exclaimed triumphantly. "The energy's flowing properly now. You can see it in the surface patterns." The ambassador rushed forward, its suit flashing with multiple colors. "Impossible. The internal diagnostics are showing. It paused, seemingly stunned. "The system is operating at 143% of normal efficiency. How did you achieve this?" Tom shrugged, starting to pack away his tools. "Your ship's surface was like a muscle with a cramp. Sometimes you just need to help it relax and reset. I figured the sound waves would break up the stuck pattern, and the magnetic field would help guide it back to where it should be. But the quantum harmonics alone should have." The ambassador stopped and made a sound like chimes in the wind. "You know what? Never mind. The ship is working better than before, and I won't question the method." Tom walked around the ship one more time, checking his work. "Actually, I noticed something else while I was fixing the blockage. Your power distribution isn't very efficient. It's like you're running everything through one big pipe when you could be using multiple smaller ones." The ambassador's silver eyes narrowed. "The design has been standardized across all diplomatic vessels for over 300 years. Well, maybe it's time for an upgrade." Tom picked up a wrench and twirled it thoughtfully. "If you'll let me make a few more adjustments, I think I could improve your power system even more. Nothing major, just some tweaks to how the energy flows." "You've already modified a diplomatic vessel far beyond approved specifications," the ambassador said. And yet, it looked at its ship, then at its timepiece. "We are still ahead of schedule for the conference. Perhaps a few small adjustments would be acceptable." Tom's face lit up with the kind of smile that usually meant either something brilliant or disastrous was about to happen. "Great. First, I'm going to need that big magnet from the crane, some copper wire from those old transformers, and maybe a few pieces from that dead Tesla in the back lot." As Tom hurried off to gather his materials, Ambassador Gray watched him with a mixture of horror and fascination. "I do hope I'm not making a terrible mistake," it said to itself, while its suit flickered with colors that might have been excitement. The night was still young, and Tom Miller was about to give an alien spacecraft the kind of upgrade that no one in the galaxy had ever imagined possible, or dared to try. The first rays of dawn were creeping over the horizon when Tom finally stepped back from the ship, wiping grease from his hands. He had spent the entire night making what he called small improvements to the ship's systems. The ambassador had watched the whole time, moving between states of panic and amazement. "There we go," Tom said proudly. "I've redirected your power flows through multiple channels, kind of like adding extra lanes to a highway. Should be much smoother now." The ship looked different. While still elegant, its surface now showed intricate patterns that moved like waves on a pond. The whole vessel seemed to hum with a new kind of energy. "You've integrated Earth metals into a quantum drive system," the ambassador said, its voice somewhere between accusation and awe. "The copper shouldn't even be able to handle these energy levels." Tom patted the ship's hull. "That's because I treated it first with that solution we made from old battery acid and some of your ship's coolant. Changed its properties completely. Pretty cool, right?" "Cool is not the word I would use," the ambassador replied. "We should run a diagnostic before." But Tom had already walked over to what he assumed was the ship's entrance. "Come on, we need to test it. All the best mechanics know you have to do a test run after major repairs." The ambassador's suit flashed with warning colors. "Test run? But you're not certified to." "Do you want to make sure it's safe before your conference?" Tom asked, already climbing inside. "Besides, I need to show you how the new power distribution system works." Realizing it couldn't stop the eager mechanic, the ambassador hurried after him into the ship. The interior was a single room filled with what looked like floating lights and liquid metal controls. Tom looked around with childlike wonder. "Fascinating. These controls are just like the hull. They respond to energy and intent." He reached out toward what seemed to be the main control panel. "Please don't touch anything," the ambassador said quickly. "The neural interface requires years of training too." Tom's hand brushed against the controls. Instantly, the entire ship hummed to life, its systems responding to his touch like an eager puppy. The ambassador froze in shock. "Hey, it's just like working on a sensitive engine," Tom said, moving his hands over the controls. "You have to feel the machine's rhythm, understand its." He never finished the sentence. The ship suddenly shot upward with incredible speed, punching through the atmosphere like a bullet through paper. Tom grabbed onto the nearest handhold, while the ambassador made a sound like a startled wind chime. "Oops," Tom said, watching Earth rapidly shrink below them. "That's a bit more power than I expected. Your drive system really liked those modifications." The ambassador finally found its voice. "We just broke through Earth's atmosphere in less than 3 seconds. That's impossible. The inertial dampeners shouldn't even." "Oh, that's because I rerouted the dampener field through those new power channels," Tom explained, starting to enjoy himself. "Distributed the load better. Should make the ride smoother too." As if to prove his point, the ship executed a perfect barrel roll without either of them feeling more than a gentle sway. Stars wheeled around them in a dazzling display. "This is amazing." Tom laughed, his eyes shining with excitement. "The ship responds just like a high-performance car now. Want to see what else it can do?" The ambassador's suit was cycling through colors faster than a disco ball. "I believe the correct Earth phrase is, 'We're in for a wild ride.'" "That's the spirit." Tom grinned, his hands dancing over the controls. The ship responded instantly, diving and weaving through space with impossible grace. "Now let's see just how fast this baby can really go." The last thing visible before they jumped to faster-than-light speed was the ambassador's suit settling on a color that might have been resignation mixed with unexpected excitement. Sometimes, it seemed, the best diplomatic lessons came from the most unexpected teachers. The modified diplomatic vessel shot through space like a meteor, leaving trails of blue-white energy in its wake. Inside, Tom was having the time of his life, while Ambassador Gray had finally stopped making distressed noises and was watching with growing interest. "Look at these power readings," the ambassador said, gesturing at floating displays that sparkled like starlight. "We're using 30% less energy than normal while moving twice as fast. It defies all known physics." Tom shrugged, his hand still moving confidently over the controls. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. Your ship was trying to push all its power through one channel. I just gave it more roads to travel on. Suddenly, red lights flashed across the ship's interior. The ambassador's suit pulsed with warning colors. Alert! We're approaching the Razor Belt, a dense asteroid field. We need to plot a course around it. Around it? Tom grinned. Where's the fun in that? Let's see what this ship can really do. Before the ambassador could protest, Tom guided the ship straight into the field of spinning rocks. The vessel responded to his touch like it was reading his mind, weaving between asteroids with impossible grace. This is just like threading my way through rush hour traffic, Tom laughed, spinning the ship sideways to slip through a narrow gap between two massive rocks. Except, in space. The ambassador watched in amazement as they danced through the asteroid field. I've never seen a ship move like this. The enhanced power distribution is allowing for instant responses to your inputs. Tom nodded, clearly in his element. Plus, those magnetic field generators we added from the old Tesla parts are helping deflect the smaller rocks. Pretty clever, right? They emerged from the other side of the asteroid field in record time. The ambassador checked its instruments again, its silver eyes widening. You just set a new speed record for crossing the Razor Belt. The previous record holder was a military pursuit vessel. Really? Cool, Tom said, then pointed at something ahead of them. Hey, what's that? A massive space station had come into view, shaped like a giant wheel with spokes reaching out in all directions. Ships of various sizes and designs moved around it like bees around a hive. That's Station Hub 7, the ambassador explained. It's a common rest stop for diplomatic vessels. We should probably dock and run a full diagnostic on these modifications before. A new alert sound filled the cabin. 3 sleek, predatory-looking ships had appeared behind them, their weapons clearly visible. Pirates, the ambassador said grimly. They often prey on diplomatic vessels, knowing we carry valuable information. Our shields won't hold against their weapons. Tom's face lit up with the kind of smile that usually meant trouble. Want to bet? Remember those power improvements we made? Watch this. He pressed his hand against a particular part of the control panel. The ship's hull began to pulse with waves of energy, the patterns Tom had created earlier shifting and flowing like liquid metal. What did you do? The ambassador asked, watching as the pirate ships opened fire. The energy bolts hit their ship and bounced right off, scattered in all directions by the rippling patterns in the hull. Used your shield energy the same way we fixed the power flow, Tom explained, already plotting an escape route. Instead of trying to block the attacks, we're redirecting them, like water flowing around rocks. The pirates fired again, with the same result. Their weapons couldn't penetrate the modified shields. Now, Tom said, his fingers dancing across the controls, let's show them what else this ship can do. The diplomatic vessel spun in space, its new systems humming with power. As the pirates watched in confusion, Tom executed a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible for a ship of this class. They twisted through space like a leaf in the wind, leaving their pursuers far behind. That, the ambassador said after a moment of stunned silence, was not in the diplomatic vessel operations manual. Tom just laughed. Sometimes the best solutions aren't in any manual. Now, which way to that conference of yours? The Grand Space Station, where the Stellar Peace Conference was being held, looked like a giant crystal flower floating in space. Hundreds of diplomatic vessels were already docked around its pedals, each one perfectly positioned and properly registered. That was until Tom and Ambassador Gray arrived in their modified ship, leaving a trail of shimmering energy behind them that made several nearby vessels' sensors go crazy. Please, the ambassador said, its suit flickering with nervous colors. Try to dock normally. We don't want to cause a scene. Normal is boring, Tom replied, but he did slow the ship down. Besides, I think we might be causing a scene anyway. He was right. Their arrival had already drawn attention. The ship's hull was pulsing with beautiful patterns of energy that no diplomatic vessel had ever shown before. Several nearby ships were scanning them intensely. A voice crackled over the ship's communication system. Diplomatic Vessel 247, your energy signature is not matching our records. Please explain the discrepancy. Ambassador Gray moved to respond, but Tom got there first. Just a few small upgrades we made. Works better than ever now. There was a long pause. Then, did you say, upgrades? To a standard diplomatic vessel. Oh yeah, Tom said enthusiastically. Fixed the power flow, improved the shields, added some new features. Want to see what it can do? No, both the ambassador and the traffic controller shouted at once. Tom laughed and guided the ship to its designated docking spot, managing to park it perfectly between two other diplomatic vessels. As they powered down the systems, a group of official-looking aliens was already gathering at the docking port. Well, the ambassador said, its suit showing a mix of resignation and amusement. This should be interesting to explain. They exited the ship to find themselves surrounded by various alien diplomats and technical experts. One tall being with crystalline features stepped forward. Ambassador Gray, it said in a formal tone, you were expected yesterday. Your delay caused some concern. And now you arrive in a... It paused, looking at their ship. Modified vessel. Actually, Tom spoke up. The ship's running better than ever. Want me to explain how I fixed it? The gathered crowd turned to look at him. Some showed signs of shock, others curiosity, and a few seemed outright offended. You? The crystalline being asked. A human. You modified one of our most sophisticated vessels. Modified is a nice way of putting it, Ambassador Gray said. He completely revolutionized several of our core systems using parts from Earth vehicles and something called a Tesla coil. This caused quite a stir among the technical experts. One of them rushed forward with scanning equipment, examining the ship's hull with growing excitement. This is impossible, the expert exclaimed. The power efficiency readings are off the charts, and these energy flow patterns, they're completely new. Tom shrugged. It's not that complicated. Your ships were trying to force everything through one channel. I just gave the energy more paths to follow, like adding extra lanes to a highway. The crystalline diplomat looked from Tom to the ship, then to Ambassador Gray. This human modified a diplomatic vessel with primitive Earth technology and made it better. Much better, Ambassador Gray confirmed. He also saved us from pirates using these modifications. I believe this demonstrates exactly what I've been trying to tell the Council about humanity's potential. The gathered crowd began talking all at once, their voices filled with a mix of disbelief and excitement. Several technical experts were now crawling all over the ship, taking readings and arguing about the implications. Tom watched it all with a small smile. So, he said to nobody in particular, anybody else need their ship fixed while I'm here? The crystalline diplomat's face showed what might have been a smile. I believe, Mr. Human, that you're about to become very popular in diplomatic circles. Tom, he corrected. Just call me Tom. Now, about those ships that need fixing. 1 month after the eventful arrival at the Stellar Peace Conference, Tom's junkyard looked very different. Alongside the usual broken-down cars and rusty machinery sat 3 diplomatic vessels, 2 trade ships, and what appeared to be a small space yacht. Each one waited for the unique touch of Earth's first mechanical ambassador. Tom wiped his hands on a rag as he finished working on a ship's power core. There you go, he said to the ship's owner, a blue-skinned diplomat. Should run about 50% more efficiently now. Remarkable, the diplomat said, examining the readings. And you did this with parts from Earth vehicles. Yep, never underestimate the power of good old-fashioned engineering. Tom grinned, patting the ship's hull. Though I have to admit, that particle accelerator part you folks gave me last week has come in handy. His workshop had grown too. Next to his regular tools hung devices that would have looked more at home in a sci-fi movie. The Stellar Council had officially recognized his talent by giving him access to their technology, though Tom still preferred using his own tools most of the time. Ambassador Gray appeared at the workshop entrance, its suit glowing with cheerful colors. The council meeting went well, it announced. They've officially approved your new engineering program. Tom's face lit up. Really? They're going to let me teach other mechanics? Indeed. The council believes your, what did you call it? Shade tree mechanic approach could revolutionize ship maintenance across the galaxy. The ambassador's suit flickered with amusement. Though some members are still trying to understand how you fixed their ships with car parts. Tom laughed, walking over to a workbench where he'd laid out his latest project. A hybrid design combining Earth engine principles with alien technology. Sometimes the old ways work best. Besides, I'm learning too. Did you know alien quantum drives work great with old motorcycle carburetors? I still don't understand how that's possible, the ambassador said, but its tone was fond. After all their adventures together, it had learned to trust Tom's unusual methods. A small crowd had gathered outside the workshop. Word had spread across the galaxy about the human mechanic who could improve even the most advanced ships using what the aliens considered primitive technology. Some came to have their ships fixed, others to learn his techniques. Mr. Miller, a young alien apprentice, called out, holding up a device. I successfully combined a human internal combustion engine with our plasma drive, just like you taught me. Good job, kid, Tom beamed. See, Ambassador, they're getting it. Sometimes you need to think simple to solve complex problems. The ambassador nodded, watching as more ships descended from the sky toward the junkyard. The council has another proposal for you, by the way. They want to establish an interstellar engineering exchange program, with you as its head. Tom raised his eyebrows. Me, teaching alien engineers, and learning from them as well. The council believes combining our technologies could lead to amazing advances. The ambassador's suit sparkled. Plus, they're still trying to understand how you made that diplomatic vessel go twice its design speed using parts from a Tesla. That's my secret. Tom winked, then turned to greet a new group of alien engineers who had just arrived. Now, who wants to learn how to supercharge a quantum drive using an old turbocharger? As Tom began explaining his latest innovation to his eager audience, Ambassador Gray watched with satisfaction. When it had crashed in that junkyard, it never imagined the accident would lead to a revolution in interstellar engineering. But then again, that seemed to be humanity's special talent, finding extraordinary solutions in ordinary places. The sun set over Miller's mechanical marvels, now the most famous repair shop in the galaxy, where Earth ingenuity met alien technology, and where the impossible became possible with just a wrench, some spare parts, and a whole lot of human creativity.